Hey everyone, welcome back to AI.Divine Insights. Today, we're going deep, like really deep.
All right, so we're back for another deep dive. And today, we're going to be tackling a pretty intense moment in Exodus.
Oh yeah.
Chapter 11, verses 1 through 10, from the New King James Version.
Okay.
You know, you want to understand this passage where God unleashes the final plague on Egypt,
Yeah,
and the drama is high?
it really is. It's a major turning point
Yeah.
in the Exodus narrative.
Yeah.
A culmination of God's power and judgment against the Egyptians,
Yeah.
and contrasted with his protection, unwavering protection of the Israelites.
Right from the start, we are just thrown into this tense situation.
Oh yeah.
God's about to bring the hammer down, literally with the death of the firstborn.
Right.
But before that happens, he instructs the Israelites to do something kind of unexpected.
Yeah.
They're told to ask the Egyptians for their silver and gold. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, it might seem a little jarring to us today,
Yeah.
but think about it in the context of the Israelites' situation.
Right.
They've endured generations of forced labor,
Yeah.
denied basic freedoms, treated brutally.
Yeah.
This request for valuables could be interpreted as a form of restitution,
Yeah.
a way of reclaiming some of what was unjustly taken from them.
It's like a cosmic payback,
Right?
wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
But it's not just about material possessions.
Right.
God promises to give the Israelites favor in the Egyptians' eyes. So there's like a supernatural element at play here.
Absolutely. God's intervention ensures that the Israelites won't be denied.
Wow.
And this reinforces a key theme throughout Exodus,
Yeah.
the stark contrast
Yeah.
between how God deals with those who obey him and those who defy him.
This distinction is really driven home in the description of the plague itself.
Right.
It's not just some random affliction.
No.
It's incredibly specific and targeted.
Yes.
Every firstborn from Pharaoh's son down to the livestock will be
Yeah.
struck down at midnight.
The timing and the universality of the plague amplifies its impact.
Yeah.
It's a deliberate
Right.
and calculated display of God's power, meant to instill fear and demonstrate the futility of resisting his will.
And the passage doesn't shy away from the emotional impact at all.
No, it doesn't.
Verse 6 talks about a cry throughout Egypt unlike anything before or since.
Yeah.
It's chilling to imagine the collective grief and despair that must have just filled the air that night.
It's a poignant reminder that these events, while part of a larger theological narrative,
Right.
have very real human consequences.
Yeah.
The Egyptians are not simply nameless, faceless antagonists.
Right.
They experience fear, loss, unimaginable sorrow.
And this intense emotional landscape is further heightened
Right.
by the contrast with the Israelites' experience.
Yeah.
They're told that not even a dog will bark at them during this plague,
Wow.
showcasing God's unwavering protection.
That divine shield underscores God's commitment to his chosen people.
Yeah.
He's separating them from the Egyptians both physically and spiritually, highlighting the consequences of following or rejecting his authority.
It's like a line in the sand is being drawn.
Precisely.
On one side, there's divine judgment and suffering. And on the other, there's safety and deliverance.
Exactly. It speaks to the broader theological framework of Exodus,
Okay.
God's judgment on those who oppose him,
Yeah.
and his unwavering deliverance of those who are faithful.
So we've talked about the severity of the plague, this clear distinction between the Israelites and the Egyptians.
Yeah.
But there's another element to this story that I find really intriguing.
Okay.
The passage mentions that Moses was very great in the land of Egypt. What's the significance of that statement?
Well, it highlights Moses' unique position and authority.
Okay.
He's not simply a messenger.
Right.
He's a respected figure, even in the eyes of the Egyptians.
Interesting.
This respect stems from his previous interactions with Pharaoh.
Oh, okay.
Remember, Moses has already performed miracles
Right.
and successfully negotiated with Pharaoh on previous occasions.
Right.
He's demonstrated his power and connection to the divine,
Okay.
which elevates his status.
So he's not just some random guy showing up and making demands.
Right.
He's got a reputation. Yeah.
Exactly.
Proven track record.
Yes.
That adds weight to his pronouncements.
Exactly. And this makes the impending confrontation with Pharaoh even more dramatic.
Right.
Moses isn't afraid to stand up to power and deliver God's message, even when it's an unpopular one.
Now here's where things take a turn into really complex territory.
Okay.
The passage talks about Pharaoh's hardened heart and his refusal to let the Israelites go.
Right.
Then it states that God hardened Pharaoh's heart.
Right.
How do we reconcile these seemingly conflicting ideas?
Well, that's a question that has been debated by theologians for centuries.
Really?
It touches upon the profound and often paradoxical relationship between divine sovereignty and human free will.
So is Pharaoh just a puppet in God's grand plan? Or does he still have some measure of choice in his actions?
To understand this concept,
Okay.
we need to delve deeper into different theological perspectives.
Okay.
Some interpretations suggest that Pharaoh's heart was already inclined toward stubbornness and disobedience. God simply allowed this natural inclination to run its course, hardening as a consequence of Pharaoh's repeated rejections of the divine will.
So it's not necessarily God actively manipulating Pharaoh's thoughts,
Right.
but rather allowing him to experience the full consequences of his own choices.
That's one way to look at it. Another perspective emphasizes God's absolute sovereignty.
Okay.
This view suggests that God, in his divine plan, chose to harden Pharaoh's heart to set the stage for a grand demonstration of his power. The plagues culminating in the death of the firstborn become a testament to God's authority over even the most powerful human rulers.
So we're left wrestling with these two profound concepts, God's control and human agency.
Right.
It's like a theological puzzle with no easy answers.
And that's the beauty of this passage.
Yeah.
It compels us to grapple with complex theological ideas, to consider different viewpoints and interpretations. There's no single definitive answer. And that ambiguity invites us to engage with the text on a deeper level.
Well, this deep dive is certainly getting my brain working over time. But before we get too lost in the theological weeds, let's pause here and pick up the rest of this Exodus journey in part 2. So picking up where we left off, I'm still kind of pondering this concept of God hardening Pharaoh's heart.
Yeah.
It just feels like such a crucial piece of the puzzle, you know?
Right.
Both in terms of understanding Pharaoh's actions and the larger theological implications.
It's definitely a pivotal element that shapes the entire Exodus narrative.
Yeah.
Remember, the hardening of Pharaoh's heart isn't just about Pharaoh's individual fate.
Okay.
It serves a larger purpose in God's grand design.
So it's not just a personal struggle between God and Pharaoh.
Right.
It's something that affects the course of history for both the Egyptians and the Israelites?
Exactly. By hardening Pharaoh's heart, God orchestrates a series of escalating events,
Yeah.
the plagues.
Yeah.
Each one becomes a more powerful demonstration of God's might and Pharaoh's ultimate helplessness against it.
It's like a cosmic showdown,
Right.
a battle of wills.
Yeah.
Between the divine and the earthly ruler.
A battle of the titans.
And this showdown isn't just about proving who's more powerful.
Okay.
It's also about revealing God's character to both the Egyptians and the Israelites.
Absolutely. The plagues serve as a testament to God's power,
Okay.
his justice, and his unwavering commitment to his chosen people. For the Egyptians, it's a stark warning about the consequences of defying the divine will.
Right.
For the Israelites, it reinforces their faith in God's ability to deliver them from oppression.
Which brings us back to that thought-provoking instruction for the Israelites to ask the Egyptians for valuables.
Right.
Knowing the devastation that's about to unfold with the death of the firstborn, how should we understand that request?
It's a complex issue.
Yeah.
One that invites us to delve into the ethical and theological dimensions of the story.
Right.
Was it a form of divine justice being served?
Yeah.
A kind of payback for the generations of enslavement and suffering endured by the Israelites?
It's almost as if they're finally receiving some material compensation for their forced labor and the injustices they've faced. But is it really about material wealth, or is there a deeper meaning?
Some interpretations suggest that it was less about material gain and more about a symbolic transfer of power.
Okay.
The Egyptians, in their grief and fear, are compelled to give up their treasures,
Right.
representing a shift in the balance of power.
Interesting.
It signifies the end of their dominance and the beginning of the Israelites' liberation.
That's an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the Israelites getting rich.
Right.
It's about dismantling the structures of oppression that have held them captive for so long.
Exactly. And it's worth noting that this request doesn't come from the Israelites themselves.
Okay.
It's a direct command from God.
Right.
He's the one orchestrating this transfer of wealth, ensuring that the Israelites are equipped for their journey to the Promised Land.
So it could be seen as a provision,
Right.
a way of ensuring that the Israelites have the resources they need to start their new life as a free people.
Precisely. And this ties back to the theme of God's faithfulness and his commitment to providing for his people, even in the midst of dramatic and challenging circumstances.
It's a reminder that even when things seem bleak, God is working behind the scenes, preparing the way for deliverance and a new beginning.
It's also important to acknowledge that this passage, like many others in the Bible, has generated a wide range of interpretations throughout history.
Right.
Some view this request for valuables as a justifiable act of recompense,
Okay.
while others wrestle with the ethical implications,
Mm-hmm.
questioning whether it aligns with modern notions of fairness and morality.
It definitely challenges us to confront the complexities of ancient cultural norms
Right?
and the sometimes ambiguous nature of divine justice. It's not always a neat and tidy package, is it?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
And that's what makes these texts so compelling. They
Yeah.
invite us to engage with difficult questions, to wrestle with our own understanding of morality and faith.
Right.
There are no easy answers, and that's okay.
I appreciate that you're acknowledging those complexities.
Sure.
It's a reminder that we don't have to shy away from the tough questions
Right.
or pretend that everything is black and white.
Right. Faith and reason are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
We can embrace the mystery and the ambiguity while still engaging in thoughtful analysis and critical reflection.
Well said. Okay, so we've explored the concept of God hardening Pharaoh's heart
Yeah.
and delved into the multifaceted interpretations of the Israelites' request for valuables.
Right.
What other key insights can you offer about this passage as we continue our deep dive?
One crucial element that we shouldn't overlook is the emotional impact of the final plague.
Okay.
The passage describes a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, unlike anything before or since.
It's a haunting image, one that really drives home the magnitude of the loss and suffering experienced by the Egyptians.
This collective cry underscores the human cost of defying God's will.
Yeah.
It reminds us that these events, while part of a larger theological narrative, have profound consequences for individuals and communities.
We can't lose sight of the individual stories within this grand narrative.
Absolutely.
It's not just about abstract concepts of justice and power.
Right.
It's about real people experiencing real pain and loss.
Precisely. And that's what makes this passage so powerful. It intertwines the divine and the human, the theological and the emotional, in a way that continues to resonate with readers across time and cultures.
It's a reminder that these ancient texts aren't just dusty historical accounts.
Right.
They grapple with universal themes of power, justice loss, and the complexities of faith.
And it's in those complexities,
Yeah.
in those gray areas where we often find the most profound insights and opportunities for growth.
I couldn't agree more. This deep dive is really highlighting the multifaceted nature of this passage and its enduring relevance.
It's a testament to the power of these stories to spark conversation, challenge our assumptions, and deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Well, I feel like our conversation is really gaining momentum. But before we get too carried away, let's take a pause here and regroup for the final part of our deep dive into Exodus chapter 11. All right, so let's try to pull together some of the threads of this conversation. Make sure we've hit all the key points for our listener.
Yeah, that sounds good. Where should
Yeah.
we start?
Well, I think, we've talked about the severity of this final plague, the death of the firstborn,
Right.
and that really clear distinction that God makes between the Israelites and the Egyptians.
Yeah, and all those complex theological questions surrounding Pharaoh's hardened heart.
Right.
That idea of divine intervention versus free will.
And there's so many ways to look at that.
Yeah.
I also think we did a good job exploring that instruction for the Israelites to ask the Egyptians for valuables.
Right.
You framed it as a potential form of reparations
Yeah.
or a provision for their journey.
Right.
I mean, it's a concept that's really stayed with me.
Yeah. It's important to remember that this event isn't just a historical curiosity.
Right.
It's a pivotal moment in the Exodus narrative, a story of liberation, faith, and the formation of a nation.
It's like this one event ripples outward, impacting not only the immediate situation, but also shaping the future of the Israelite people.
Exactly. And its themes of deliverance, judgment, and the complexities of divine intervention continue to resonate with readers and believers today.
I feel like you've given us so much to think about. But before we let you go, I have one final question.
Okay, see.
Knowing the devastation this plague would cause,
Yeah.
how might it have felt for the Israelites to ask the Egyptians for valuables? Was it a necessary part of God's plan? A form of justice? Or a morally ambiguous act that leaves us with more questions than answers?
I think that is such a powerful question. And it really gets at the heart of the moral and theological complexities we've been discussing. I don't think there's one simple answer that will satisfy everyone. It's something each listener needs to grapple with on their own, using what we've explored today as a springboard for deeper reflection.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that sometimes the most important questions are the ones that don't have easy answers.
Absolutely. Engaging with these complex issues, even when they make us uncomfortable, is essential for growth and understanding. embracing the mystery and wrestling with those big, enduring questions about faith, morality, and the human condition.
That's a great point. We've explored a lot in this deep dive, but I think we've only scratched the surface of this profound and thought-provoking passage.
Yeah, I agree. I would encourage everyone listening to revisit Exodus chapter 11 on their own. Sit with these ideas and continue to ponder their implications. I think you might be surprised by what you discover.
I love that this deep dive isn't the end, it's just the beginning of a much larger exploration.
Exactly. And remember, even within a single text, multiple interpretations can coexist. Don't be afraid to engage with different perspectives, to question your assumptions, and to embrace the mystery. That's where true understanding begins.
Such wise words to end on. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Exodus. Until next time, keep diving deep and keep those questions coming. Also, please like and subscribe to AI.Divine Insights for daily podcast episodes.
See you next time.